They didn't even wave. So somewhere on that road, I decided the mountain could keep me instead.
They didn't even wave. So somewhere on that road, I decided the mountain could keep me instead. She said that beside her trunk, in the wheel ruts of a wagon road, 9,000 feet up in the Colorado Rockies, to a man she had known a minute, and she had not meant to say any of it. An hour before, the freighter had swung the trunk down into those ruts, said, "This is as far as I take it, miss," and turned his team. Below the road, a long grass park opened out, a creek down the middle of it, a ranch at the far end, no bigger than something set in the bottom of a bowl. It was the 22nd of August, 1889. Lenora Ferris was 24 years old and had been 4 days getting there. She had left her father's house on a Monday morning. Nobody was on the step. Her father had business at the store. Her sister was not up yet. Now a man came out of the ranch door below, put on his hat, and started up the lane on foot. Odell Calder was 33, and he came up that lane without hurrying. She noticed it. Every man who had ever been brought into her father's front room to look her over had hurried. He stopped a few feet short and looked at the trunk before he looked at her. "Miss Ferris." "Mr. Calder, anybody see you off?" "They didn't even wave," she said. "So somewhere on that road I decided the mountain could keep me instead." She knew what came after a woman was weighed. The small breath, and then the courtesy that is only a door shutting softly. Odell Calder bent down, took a handle of the trunk, and got it up onto his shoulder. "Steep from here to the house," he said. "Go slow your first week. The air makes fools of everybody." At the porch, he set the trunk on the boards and stood a moment looking out at his own park, the way a man looks at whether he means to argue with. "Supper's at 6, he said. "The rest will figure." That was all the welcome there was. She turned it over for weeks afterward, in the dark, the way you turn over a coin you are not sure of. There had been no examination in it anywhere. The arrangement had been made the way such things were made, which is to say by people who were not in the room when it mattered. A cousin of her stepmother's had married into that country and still wrote at Christmas. What went up the mountain in June said, "A steady young woman, 24, of no expectations," and then carefully that no money would come with her. What came back in July said only that August was a workable month and the freight ran on Thursdays. Lenora was told at supper, between the potatoes and the pie. Told, not asked. Her father talked about the fair, and her stepmother talked about what a woman ought to pack, and neither of them said the word marriage out loud, because to say it would have made it a hope, and nobody at that table wanted to be caught hoping. That first night on the mountain, Odell Calder set a lamp on the table and said his piece standing up. "You're not bought, Miss Ferris. There's no bargain on you here, and there won't be one made behind you. The stage runs out of Hesper till the pass shuts. After that you're wintered in whether you like it or not. So the 1st of November is the last honest day for making up your mind, and I'd as soon you knew it now as found it out then." She said she understood. Then she asked her one question of the evening. "The blue roan in the corral, is he yours?" She was not, by the measure her stepmother used, much of a housekeeper. Her first loaf came out of that oven with a crust you could have shot a horse with. Renfrew, who was past 60 and had wintered on the place longer than Odell Calder had owned it, ate 2 pieces of it and said the altitude was hard on bread, which was a kindness and an untruth, in about equal parts. Her seams ran crooked. Her curtains hung crooked after them. But she was up before either man, every morning. And by the end of the first week they both knew where to find her. And it was not the kitchen. It was the corral fence. She stood at it the way other people sit down. There had been a man behind her father's store who broke horses in a lot no bigger than a parlor, and he had let her hold the lines when she was 10, and had asked her what she saw. The only time in that town anybody asked her a question and then waited for the answer. Her family had a bay mare that nobody could shoe. Lenora could shoe her, and in 14 years nobody in that house ever remarked on it. It was a thing about her, like the color of her hair, and about that much use. The blue roan was 4 years old, and Odell Calder had bought him cheap in the spring from a man who had quit trying. He was not a mean horse, only one that had been handled badly and remembered it. He would let a man into the corral and no further. He came apart at the sight of a rope, and by August the honest thing to do with him was ship him with the beef, which Odell had decided on and had not yet done. On the first Monday in September, Lenora Ferris walked into that corral with nothing in her hands. She did not talk to him. She did not put her eyes on him. She went to the far side and stood with her shoulder turned and looked out at the mountain like a woman waiting for a train. And she stayed there while the roan ran the fence and blew and ran it again. And she stayed there when he stopped. And she stayed there through the long stretch afterward, when nothing at all happened, which is the part most people cannot do. It took the better part of 2 hours. Then the roan came off the fence and crossed the pen and put his nose against the back of her arm. Odell Calder had come up to the gate at some point and had stopped there with one boot on the bottom rail. He watched the whole last hour of it and never said a word. And when she came out, he opened the gate for her and shut it after her and went off to the barn. Renfrew, at the corner of the barn, was less disciplined about it. "Well," he said, to nobody, "I'll be." Somebody in that house down on the plains had decided, years back, what Lenora Ferris was worth. And I would like you to hear the reasoning, because it is short, and because you have heard it before about somebody. She was quiet at table. She did not carry a room. Her needlework was honest and no better. She had a way of not answering a question until she had finished thinking. And in a front room full of company that reads as slowness, and slowness in a daughter reads as trouble ahead. That was the verdict on her, and it had been in since she was about 16. Nobody in that house was cruel. That is the part people always want and never get. Her father was a tired man with a store and a second wife and a younger daughter who was easy to be proud of. Her stepmother had come into a house with a grown girl already in it and had done, most days, better than she had to. They were not wicked. They were finished looking. And here is what the verdict left out. It left out a bay mare standing quiet for a girl with a rasp in her hand. It left out 14 years of a person watching everything and being watched by nobody. They sent away the part of that household that worked, and they never knew they had done it. And they would not have thanked you for telling them. Now, over the years, I have put together a bundle of pages out of what the high country outfits set down about their own winters, feed notes, weather notes, The sort of thing a man writes for himself and never for a stranger. Two things come up in them so often you stop marking them. The first is that in a park at 9,000 feet, the winter is not decided in January. It is decided in September. What grass you cut, what stock you keep, what you ship while the road is still a road. That is the whole argument. And it is over before the first storm ever gets there. In January, nothing moves. You cannot buy hay in January. There is none to buy, and no way to bring it, if there were. The second is that the men who came out of those winters in one piece were not, as a rule, the bold ones. They were the ones who had been told the truth in the fall, by somebody who was not afraid to say it. Lenora Ferris and Odell Calder are mine. The September is not. It belonged to that country a long while before I got to it. September on that place was work from dark to dark, and she took hold of it without being asked twice. She learned the park, where the bog lay under good-looking grass, which draw held stock in a blow, and which one only looked as if it would. She rode the roan by the middle of the month, and he was a different animal by then, and everybody could see it, and nobody made a speech about it. There was a heifer that went down with bloat on the 11th, and Lenora had her up and walking within the hour, and Renfrew told that story in Hesper twice before Christmas. Mrs. Poole, whose outfit lay over the divide to the north, rode down with a sack of seed potatoes, and stayed 2 hours and asked the questions a woman asks when she is deciding whether the new one on the next place is going to be worth the ride. She went home having decided. Only one thing in that house had not moved since August. The trunk stood at the foot of the bed with the straps buckled. Lenora took out of it what she needed for the day and put back what she was done with, and never once emptied it. Odell Calder cleared a shelf and 2 pegs in that room the second week and did not mention it, and the shelf stayed bare, and he did not mention that either. On the 24th of September, she told him the country was early. She had been 3 days working up to it, and she said it at the barn door, straight through, the way you get through a thing you have practiced. The aspens on the north side had turned 3 weeks ahead of the calendar. The creek was low for the month. The first hard frost had come on the 12th. The geese had been going over at night for a week and going high. You ship the first part of November, she said. You'll be gathering in snow. And it isn't only the weather. You put that stack up in July for what you were feeding in July. Then you bought 60 head off a man quitting the country, and the stack never grew to match them, and it was a dry summer besides. Odell Calder stood there with a bridle over his arm. Say the rest of it. Gather Monday. Ship the second Saturday in October. 60 head go, and it doesn't matter whose they were. You cut the poorest 60 off the whole outfit, and you winter what that stack was cut to feed, and not one animal past it. You'll take less for them in October than you'd have taken in November. She stopped, and then said the last of it anyway. You'd take nothing at all for them in March. Renfrew was in the doorway by then, chewing on it. She ain't wrong about the stack, he said. I've been walking past that stack since August. Odell Calder looked at the two of them for a while. Then we gather Monday, he said, and went to hang up the bridle. He did not praise her. She noticed that too, and was a long time understanding that it was the highest thing he could have done. They started the gather on the last Monday in September, and were 4 days at it, and they took the cut down to Hesper on the 12th of October, which was a Saturday, and the pens along the narrow gauge were full of other men's cattle and other men's dust. The buyer went low, the way buyers do in a month when everybody knows they are early, and Odell Calder sold anyway, and did not complain about the price where she could hear it. Afterward, she walked up to the store, because Renfrew wanted coffee, and because in 7 weeks, she had never once been the one to go for the mail. Bartle kept the mail window at the back of his store, behind the harness. He looked at her, and then at the pigeonhole, and then at her again, with the particular interest of a man who's been holding something. "Calder's place," he said. "You'd be the one then. Lenora Ferris. That's the name on it." He put it into her hand. Her father's writing, never once in her life directed at her, on an envelope that had come up the mountain, by the same road she had. She did not open it in the store. She did not open it in the wagon, with Renfrew talking beside her the whole way about the price of beef. She carried it against her leg the 10 miles home, and she carried it up the porch steps, and the sun went down behind the range, and she sat on the edge of her bed next to a trunk that was still packed and broke the seal. It was 2 pages, and it was in her father's hand the whole way, which meant her stepmother had stood over it. Her sister was to be married in May to a man from the county seat. There would be the whole winter of getting the wedding up and the store to mind through it. And her stepmother's hands were bad again in the mornings. The house would want somebody steady in it from the middle of December. Her place was there, her father wrote, and he was glad now to be able to say so. There was no line in either page that asked how she was, or what the mountain was like, or whether anybody up there had spoken kindly to her. He did not know the pass shut. He had sent her 4 days up a road and had never looked to see where the road went. She read it twice and then went out to the barn, where Odell Calder was oiling a cinch by lantern light, and told him what was in it, and then said the rest before she could stop herself. "I have been useful here for 7 weeks. I know what that is worth because I watched it be worth nothing at all for 14 years. Her voice did not rise. That was the part he thought about afterward. If a place is only a place while you are of use to it, then this one is the same as that one. It only has better weather. Odell Calder set the cinch down across his knee. "That's a fair thing to be afraid of," he said. She waited for the rest of it. There wasn't any rest of it. "You've got till the 1st of November, he said. "I'm not going to spend it talking you into anything." For the better part of 2 weeks, she worked like the place was going to be taken off her on a Saturday. She was up in the dark. She carried water she did not need. And Odell Calder stepped back. He had come up to the corral most evenings since September. Now he did not. He asked her nothing more about the letter, and took himself off to the far end of the park in the daylight, and was civil at supper, and every one of those was a door he was holding open for her, and not one of them looked like an open door from where she stood. Some evening in there she knelt at the foot of the bed, and took the strap of the trunk 1 notch tighter than it had been since August. 2 people being careful. That was all the trouble there was in that house, and there was nobody in it to blame. I have hunted up a fair number of the letters that went back east out of that country, the ones the women wrote. And they are a strange kind of reading, because you can watch a person's idea of herself change from one Christmas to the next. A daughter who had not been thought suited to anything in an Ohio town is, 4 years later, the one on the place who gets sent for when a horse will not load. A woman ridden off her home is writing home about water rights and about whose cattle came through the winter and whose did not, and she is not apologizing for knowing it. Now, whether that country saw them differently, or whether they only got far enough from the people who had already made up their minds, that those letters do not say, and I will not pretend they do. What I will say is that nobody back east ever wrote and admitted to being wrong. That is not how it went. The old opinion was never overturned. It simply quit having anybody in the room to hold it up. Toward the end of October, she came in from the corral, stood at the end of the kitchen table where he was working over a broken hame strap, and asked him straight out, "Tell me what I'm for here," she said. "Put it in a sentence, and I'll do it well. And then I'll know where I stand, and I'll stop taking up your evenings with it." Odell Calder put the strap down. "You keep asking what you're for," he said. "This ranch stopped asking the day you came." She stood there. He could have gone on. A man who wanted to be admired would have made a speech of it and been very fine, and she would have had to stand there and receive it, and it would have cost her something. What he did instead was pick the strap back up. "Waterhole below the barn is skinning over by 4 in the afternoon now," he said. "That'll want breaking twice a day before long. I'd sooner you took the morning one, because the roan follows you down and he'll bring the rest." "All right," she said. He never came back to it. She went to bed and got out the paper her stepmother had packed for her and sat with it on her knee until the lamp wanted filling and did not write a word. Now, I would rather you did not expect her to be all right about it that same week. A man says one true sentence over a broken hame strap, and 14 years does not come off a person like a coat. She heard it. She believed he meant it. And she still went out the next morning and broke ice like a woman who thought she was being watched. That is why I am not going to hand the end of this to Odell Calder. He had said his piece once plainly, and then had the sense to leave it alone. The rest of it was hers, and it had to be, or it would not have held. On the 28th of October, a boy came down from over the divide to say that Mrs. Poole's mare had been at it since before daylight and was not getting on with it, and could Miss Ferris come? Not Mr. Calder, Miss Ferris. She was up there 11 hours. The foal lived and the mare lived. Mrs. Poole put her hands flat on the table and said she had had 2 neighbors she could send for, and now had 3. She did not thank her past that, which was exactly right. Odell Calder came up with the wagon in the dark to fetch her. The air had gone flat and still and smelled of snow, and neither of them said so, because saying so is bad luck. Halfway down he said, "Pass'll go inside of 2 weeks. I know it." "Well," he said, "the rest we'll figure. That's what you said in August." She was looking out at the black shape of the range. "I have been trying to make out ever since what it is I'm the rest of." He did not answer that, but he took the long way at the creek so the wagon would not jolt her, and she noticed, and put it with the other things she had been collecting since August. On the morning of the 1st of November, he had the team hitched before she was down. Her trunk was already in the wagon bed. He had carried it out and roped it, and when she came onto the porch, he said nothing about it and did not look at her to see how she took it. That was the last thing he did for her before she decided. And I think it was the best one. They went the 10 miles into Hesper without much talk. 2 miles out, he said the one thing about himself that she got from him that whole fall. I came up here in 81 on my own account, he said. There was a letter came after me from my people. I never answered it. I meant to every winter for about 4 years, and then it got to where answering it would have been a bigger thing than not answering it, and now the man it was from is dead. I'm not telling you that to move you, he said. I'm telling you so you know I'm no hand at this, and you'd best not take my advice on it. The stage was standing in the street in front of the hotel, with the team already hooked, and a crate of chickens going up onto the boot, and it wanted half an hour yet of leaving. Lenora Ferris looked at it a while. Pull up at the store, she said. I need paper, and half an hour. I am going to tell you what she put in that letter, but I want you to have the other thing first, because it is the one that matters, and it is this. Nobody at that mail window helped her. Bartle gave her a sheet and a pen, moved the harness off the end of the counter, and went away to the front of the store, which was the kindest thing available to him. Odell Calder stayed out at the wagon with the lines in his hands, and did not come in, and he never asked, then or later, to see what she had written. She was a good deal less than half an hour. She bought the stamp. She put the letter into Bartle's hand herself, and Bartle put it into the sack, and the sack went onto the stage, and at 11:10, the stage went out of Hesper for the plains, with her letter on it, and without her. Then she walked out to the wagon, and the two of them took the trunk down out of the bed and set it on the boards in front of the store, and stood looking at it, like a job neither of them had figured on. Well, Odell Calder said, that's got to go back up the hill then. He waited until they were most of the way home to ask, and he asked it looking at the team. What did you tell them? That I'll come in the spring for a week, for my sister, if the road allows it, and that they're not to keep the store shut on my account. She had it by heart. She had had it by heart before she wrote it. And then 2 lines of my own, which were, I am needed here, she said, and wanted, which is different. Odell Calder drove about a 1/4 mile. Then I'll say mine, he said, and it's shorter than the one I said in August. I'd like you to marry me. I'd have asked in September. I didn't, because you'd have had to answer it with that road still open behind you, and neither of us would ever have known for certain which one you were answering. Say it once more without the reasoning. Marry me. Yes, she said. 3 things first. Go on. The roan's mine. Not to be sold, not this year, and not in a bad one. Done. When I tell you something about this place, you'll hear me out in front of Renfrew, not after he's gone in. Then argue with me all you like. That's fair. 3rd? She took a while on the 3rd. If they ever come up that road, she said, they get supper. I'm not going to have a door in my house shut the way that one was shut, not even on them. He nodded slowly and turned the team in at the lane, and did not spoil it by admiring her for it. All right, he said. The rest we'll figure, said Lenora Ferris. That is the end of the part I can prove, and the rest of it is a winter, and the winter was quiet. They were married in the middle of November, in the kitchen of that house by a man who rode up from Hesper and ate 2 plates of supper before he went back down. Renfrew stood up with them. Mrs. Poole came over the divide and brought a hen. The pass had shut the week before, and neither of them mentioned it. The snow came on the 20th, down the ridges first, so that for an hour you can watch the line of it coming, and there is nothing to do about it. She watched it come down the park from the kitchen window, and the roan stood with his head over the top rail, looking at the house. Sometime in there the trunk went up to the loft with the straps hanging loose, and the shelf in the back room filled, and neither of them made a ceremony of it. The answer from the plains came in April. It was 4 lines long, and it was mostly about the store. I am not going to make it into more than it was, or into less. She read it at the table, put it in the drawer, and went out to see about the roan. She went down for her sister's wedding in May and came back in 9 days. They kept that place 41 years. Good night.